Welcome to Fridays with Anne. This is a series of conversations with Belgian homeopath Anne Vervaeke about homeopathy. I will ask her curiously whatever confuses me in homeopathy, like case taking, case analysis, or theory in general, and Anne will answer according to her insights, experience, and most recent findings. You, the viewer, are invited to participate actively, so please feel free to send in comments and questions. And now today's episode of Fridays with Anne.
Hello and welcome to Fridays with Anne. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Joost.
Okay, for today, I want to bring in something that I was pondering recently, and it's we have been speaking about a lot of treating individuals and taking their individual symptoms and putting them in the individual classifications and so on. And now I would like to ask you about treating individuality versus treating collective, treating collectivity. No, that's not a word. Collective aspects. And yeah, would invite you to share your opinion on this and also how you differentiate or how you understand this.
This is kind of a vast topic, but very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I pondered over it myself before because we have a friend of mine speaks at chapel, so we had these discussions about what is a collective and what is how to say the importance of the collective and is the individual treatment a delusion after all, or is it appropriate and all that. So I'm the one who argues that the individual prescription, that the similarment, the individual prescription is what we should do. But do we have to do
so his opinion, sorry for interrupting, but his opinion would be that there is no individual treatment.
Yes. He would even go that far in saying individuality is is in itself a delusion. It just doesn't.
All right.
He would say, we're just a conglomerate of the collective, and we have collective miasms, inherited traits, we have collective traumas, we have environmental things like toxins, and this all defines us and produces our symptoms. So if we take away all those layers, he would treat with virtually the same remedies for everybody. Then he claims to have treated the patients because there's no symptoms left. So and so he says it's not even necessary, and in many cases it won't even help with your similarment if you don't deal with the collective.
Wow, that is a big claim, and that is an interesting perspective on this all.
Yes, it is. But now what do we see in practice? Of course, that is the only thing I can base my theory on is
yes,
my patients present with. And I have to admit, some patients seem to present with that clear individual picture, which I would say is the basis of our prescription. We try to match the remedy with the individuality of the person. And some patients seem to present more or less with collective issues, and I can clarify this a bit. These persons with a strong identity, like the identities of the foreground. We all have an identity, of course, but with some people it seems to be stronger and more outspoken than the collective issues. Persons with a strong identity also have collective issues. We all have. We're not living in a vacuum. We're all living in a particular time and place and are influenced by the collective.
Yes, and before we move on, please give a few examples or hints about what collective means so that we kind of get a firmer grasp on what this means, collective.
Okay. What I understand by the collective is, let's say, well, at least it presents itself very often in epidemics. So it seems to be a collective issue that expresses itself by a collective disease. Most of the time it is contagious, or it was contagious in former times, like the medieval pest and like after the World War I, we had this Spanish flu, and if there's a disaster, you have a cholera outbreak, or in Africa, you have all those epidemics still, malaria, and I don't have to, to sum them up, While with us now, in our modern times, most of the patients we see, they have a different kind of collective, or they present with a different kind of collective disease, like they have this, we call them modern diseases, but in the journals they are called epidemics. Epidemics of autism, of chronic fatigue, of burnout, of depression, of allergies, intolerances, HDAD, Lyme disease, just name it. We see a lot of those patients, and it's like epidemics. It's like the disease didn't exist 30, 40 years ago, or were very rare, and now we see them like in such numbers. And cancer, of course, it's also, it's called the cancer epidemic. It's also, you could say, an epidemic disease. So this different kind of epidemics, you could say the more acute epidemics after a traumatic event. It could be an earthquake or whatever, a war, or an epidemic because of the collective issue of the society where the patient lives in. And then, if that is on the foreground, I would really consider to treat the collective problem rather than the individual.
Right, so you would treat the collective issue in the individual,
yes,
then rather than the individual issue. And what does it look like in practice? Do you have an example for this?
Yeah, well, it looks a little bit like clinical prescription.
Yeah. I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah, you prescribe for the disease picture rather than for the personality picture.
And then, even within the clinical prescription, you would look then for peculiar clinical symptoms or physical symptoms?
The totality of.
Right, yeah.
As we treat an epidemic, you could say the totality of this particular epidemic. That would not leave you with hundreds of remedies, maybe 10.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, or maybe like, in Jeremy Scher's case, he has like 30 remedies that he uses a lot in those AIDS patients. He has, of course, he knows many more remedies, but these 30 are the majority of his cases.
All right. So even in that sense, AIDS is an epidemic.
Yes, you can consider it in that particular way. If somebody, even with Lyme disease or whatever, presents with a very strong individual experience, and you can see the picture, I would give the Similamen. Still, even when it's a collective disease picture.
Yeah.
But if the individual is strong and on the foreground, then still I would try with the Similamen first and see with the rest of the symptoms. But we often said, or I often said, in chronic fatigue, you have this chronic fatigue picture, and it's very hard to see even an individual person. They all look like this syndrome. You have the syndrome of symptoms, and they all look more or less the same.
Yeah, and with symptoms, I find it even harder. For example, chronic fatigue or burnout. I mean, this is also not a real diagnosis, because it can encompass so many vague symptoms.
Yes.
And other than maybe Lyme disease or AIDS, which are a little bit more circumscribed or have some parameters which are more outstanding.
Yes, you're right. So they are even more difficult, like burnout and chronic fatigue. It's very hard to have clear symptoms or a collective, like a totality of symptoms, because they're all vague. Sometimes, but not always, sometimes you're helped out with bacteria. And not too much to our surprise afterwards. You say, you can imagine that a person who is a constitutional bacteria is more prone to those kinds of syndromes.
Yes, yes, I see what you mean. And maybe even if bacteria have the role of clearing up, tidying up, taking out garbage in our system, and are not really the infective or ill-making agent, then maybe this is also what is lacking in these syndrome states.
Yeah.
And this is maybe also another reason why the bacterium remedy could work then.
Yeah, could work. Yeah, sometimes I call those patients the canaries, you know, the first ones to succumb under the enormous pressure of the environment. While
Yeah.
others, I don't know what makes a difference. I don't know why a person would choose to have to present with an expression of collective issues rather than individual issues. I don't know, but anyway, it seems to be that it's either the one or the other.
Yes, yes.
So if a person lives this out, maybe it is just showing that the pressure of the collective is too much.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have to deal with that. And in my point of view, whether a person is treated for a collective issue, and treated I mean cured, or he is treated and cured for an individual issue, both benefits, or the collective benefits from both ways.
Right.
So in the end, it doesn't really matter for the collective whether you enter this door or this door.
Right.
Whether you choose this or this.
I see. And so this is for you, but I mean, collective meaning or collective issues are, if we try a definition, is this challenges that humans are confronted with of our times?
Yeah, I would see it as connected to a certain place and time, a certain period in history, a certain combination of philosophy, of you know, way of life, of what people believe, what people do. Paradigm, yeah. This and even within one paradigm, you can have different collective clusters.
Yeah.
And with typical topics, typical issues, and then some people seem to resonate with that and display the symptom picture and express it.
So in your experience then, an individual remedy does not even work or work very well, so you have to prescribe a collective remedy.
Yes, and that's also an experience that I was a little bit, how to say, disappointed by. That yes, I have the civillimum, and you know, the violence should start to play and all that, and the patient is not even affected by it.
Yes.
After 2 months, same thing. It comes after 4 months, nothing changed. After 6 months, it's exactly the same. So you have to admit that the civillimum didn't do a thing. So it is not the source of the problem. It's not
right. Yeah. So it should even be possible then, and that's obviously what Jeremy Sher also arrived at, to find a genius epidemicus for these collective issues.
For these syndromes. And I think that's exactly what Peter Chappell is doing.
Right.
Or at least he's one of the persons. Maybe there are more homeopaths that I'm not aware of that are really dealing with these collective issues.
And can we, sorry?
No, go on.
And can we then maybe, or can I maybe then understand his perspective that there is no individual treatment a bit better by thinking, okay, the biggest challenge for, as far as I know, he's also working in Africa, right?
Yeah, so people working with his remedies in Africa.
Yeah. Maybe this is the biggest challenge that the people there are facing, are these epidemic diseases, and once those are gone, this is, given their life circumstances, all they needed.
Well, yes, if you treat them, let's say for a malaria, you won't see them back because they'll be very happy.
Yeah.
And as
And
we
they
always
won't
say,
expect other things.
oh no, and they don't have any other problem so
Yeah.
far, because you know, as a homeopath, we always say make sure that your patient keeps breathing. That's the first thing. Yeah.
Gives what?
Keeps breathing. You know.
Yes, yeah.
That's the first thing. So the first things first. If your life is in danger, your physical integrity is in danger, then you have to take care of that first. If you have a fatal disease, well, it's clear. It's the same with cancer. You can give a simillimum to a cancer patient, but it won't be enough. If you don't deal with this body that it's showing you it's in an end stage, even if it's only cancer stage 1.
Yeah.
A very diseased body that allows the cancer tumor to develop. So it's not enough to give a simillimum and say, go in peace, I will see you in 2 months. You can't do that. We know that. You have to deal with the body to keep the body alive, and later you can see anything more you can do.
Yeah. Another way of seeing collective that I came across recently, which doesn't mean that it's anything new. It was the conclusion that Tinus Smits, a homeopath from the Netherlands, came to, and but he means then, from what I understand from our conversation, he means a different type of collective, because he was speaking about universal layers, and I can understand that also in terms of collective, as in we all have these in common or share these. But this is not this has not really to do with this type of collective, right?
No, I read Tinus Smith's work, and he was a great homeopath, absolutely, and he did wonderful work. But his idea of collective is universal. I think that's a distinction we have to make here.
Yeah.
Universal issues, and in a way, Peter Chappell also actually points to universal issues, like, let's say, traumatic residues of fear, like survival issues.
Right. Yeah. Isn't he also dedicating a lot of his work towards collective traumas?
Yes.
Is it war trauma or refugees or something like this?
Yes, and of course he claims, like, if you go like 4 or 5 generations, there's war everywhere. It's not like I didn't go through war and my family didn't. But even a few more generations, and you will have ancestors who face these problems. So yes, it's this collective traumas, you could say universal traumas. And Tinus Smith the same, I think. It's not particularly emphasizing the traumas, but universal issues.
Yeah. Exactly. That's more like it. He's not as I haven't read much about it. Just the basic idea, but it's not about traumas. It's more like universal issues. That's a good word. Like things that we tend to suffer from commonly, like a feeling of lack of self-love, or a lack of confidence, or a lack of having really arrived into our bodies, feeling in our bodies, or a lack of protection from the outside, from the other, from energy coming from outside. That's rather universal issues, right?
Yes. And it occurs to me that you used the word, and it's very rightly chosen, lack of. And it's more like we could say the delusion that we lack anything, because we don't. The basic human condition experience is one of lacking anything, which is impossible. In reality, we're not lacking anything, but we feel that's our sensation. We lack love, we lack security, we lack, well, name it, and therefore we feel miserable. He tries with particular remedies to meet this need to
Yes.
cure this? I don't know. I don't know. There's indeed universal experiences based on on a wrong idea, on the erroneous idea.
Can you repeat that, please? I didn't hear.
Yes, it is a universal conviction, but it's based on an erroneous idea.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you would hope that with good similitude, a person would come to the conscious awareness that this is not so, that he is okay anyway, anyhow, unconditionally, no matter how, and if he is okay, the world is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we might say that Tino Smits was looking for the genius epidemicus of these universal issues, so to say.
Yes, of humanity. Let's
Of
speak
humanity. Yeah.
Well, maybe you have a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't, I haven't checked that, but because I don't know much about Peter Chappell's work beyond the superficial information of what we spoke about. So I don't know if there is any intersection between, if he treats universal aspects of humans, and Tino Smits did as well, if this intersects somehow in their remedies or the conclusions that they found.
I don't know, because Tino Smits used, let's say, existing homeopathic remedies, except one. He made one like Carcinosinum cum cuprum.
Yes.
Was his own invention, I think. While Peter makes his own remedies.
Ah, right.
And they're not really homeopathy even. And some people refuse to use them on this basis. Like homeopaths say, no, I won't use them because it's not homeopathy. Even if they work, I won't use them because it's not homeopathy. And it's not. He doesn't claim it's homeopathy.
Okay. It's not homeopathy because it's not chosen based on totality or similarity or...
And not remedies. He doesn't use homeopathic remedies.
Preparations.
He makes his own.
Okay, yeah. All right. Doesn't he even have remedies for enlightenment or something like this?
Probably. If you can make remedies, you can make remedies for everything, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in that area, we cannot speak about experience. So the treating the collective is a little bit level 1 prescription. When this is what is in the foreground, right?
Yes, level 2, and
right, yeah.
What is in the foreground? That means the whole person is like overwhelmed by the collective disease and issue. He's not functioning. It's all his symptoms are only that picture.
Yeah.
All he tells and all is connected to all his feelings and bodily and mental, emotional feelings are all this one thing. For us, it's easier to understand if you have the cholera that, you express yourself very clearly. You're on the toilet and you're throwing up and you're shaking with fever and all. It's very simple. So this collective diseases, we use more words because they're more subtle, they're more vague, they're more all over the place, and they're less acute. Nevertheless, there's, in the same way, all pervasive. It's all that you see. You don't see anything else, and you heard it before, because the other patient with the same syndrome has virtually the same syndromes, the same symptoms.
Yeah.
It's very hard to differentiate on a personal basis.
Yeah.
Then I would try to prescribe for the epidemic disease.
Yeah, and according to also to the idea of a genius epidemicus, it's not necessary to find an individual remedy, or you might have a few remedies that fit this presentation, and within these you can individualize, right?
Yes, it's very similar to treating cancer. Of course, we don't do that and all that, but Ramakrishnan with his cancer procedures,
Uh-huh.
He prescribes a miasmatic remedy, you know that, clocimillimum to the
Yes.
or he sees as personality, and then an org remedy and daily. Yeah, and
Right. Yeah.
even that might not be enough. The patient
Yeah.
still needs some, you know, dietary.
Lifestyle changes, in a major way.
Absolutely. On top of the homeopathic treatment, that is much more intense than just 1 millimum and off you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's you can compare it to a cancer treatment.
Mhm.
If you know, confronted with a cancer patient, you probably won't try to go into all depths of his personality. He has now more important things to deal with.
Yeah. 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 I see. Uh-huh. Excellent. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was very insightful. Okay, yeah. So we can sum up that when the patient presents with our modern syndrome diseases, and this is in the foreground of the consultation, and there is little individuality or little of the individuality of the I coming through that would allow for seeing a deeper picture, we can prescribe for this collective issue at hand. Yeah. All right. Okay. More for me to ponder about. Great.
Okay. So maybe
Thank you very much.
next Friday for other questions, for more questions.
Exactly. Yeah. We have more topics, and we have definitely more groups to discuss, group aspects.
Yes.
Thanks very much for this one, and I look forward to the next one.
You too. Okay. Bye, Jos. Have a good
Bye,
weekend.
Anna. You too.
Bye.